There, I hope everybody can see that. That nice $10 stamp.
Okay.
Guy Lafleur.
Nice.
I had him sign it too.
Is it? And you got his autograph?
Yeah, I had him sign it at the Aiken Center.
Really?
Yeah. A $10 stamp.
Well, you wasted a $10 pen, maybe.
Two of them to be exact.
Should have got them to sign the
Put one
$10 bill
upside
and be
down,
farther
yeah.
ahead.
Okay, it's 6:30 and I'll call the meeting to order, please. Okay, record of attendance. Approval of the agenda moved by
Move, Judy.
Second it,
Judy.
Bob Powell.
Bob. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes of April 5th, 2022, moved by,
Judy.
Seconded, Ian.
anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I
Opposed? Motion is carried. Skipped over conflict of interest disclosure. If anyone has a conflict, please disclose it. Thank you. Committee reports. Director Morrison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met on April 21st, 2022. In attendance were myself, Greg Erickson, Derek Pleadwell, Stephen Sharp, David Duplessis, Brett LeCrae, Mary Kay Lincoln, and Tony Spears. The meeting was called to order by the chair at 3:30 p.m. The meeting began with a review of the first quarter of the post-closure fund. Our investments were in compliance with the allocation target specified in the IPCS. First quarter yielded a return of minus 5.81%. This is due to many factors, with inflation being the primary driving force. Mr. Spears stated it's important to remember this is a long-term investment. The fund has returned an average of 5.64% per year since the last update to the IPS. Ms. Langton then reviewed the first quarter financial results for the commission, which are attached to this report for your perusal. She noted that tonnage for the first quarter was 1,500 tons higher than what was budgeted. Ms. Langdon also gave preliminary reviews on how the price of fuel is going to affect the landfill. Power generation is still producing higher gas flows than expected in the first quarter, with a slight decrease in March. Overall, all divisions are outperforming our right on budget, but with the price of fuel, we're expecting challenges for the rest of the year. Mr. McCrae then presented the staff report, which details a tender recommendation for Clear Stone that is attached and has the committee's support. There being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 3:53 p.m., respectively submitted by myself. Do I go right into the motions, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, motion one, I move that the board receive the report of the Finance Committee dated May 3rd, 2022.
Seconded, Dale Morey.
Seconder,
Seconded, Dale Morey.
seconded by Dale. Anything on the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Second motion, please.
Second motion, I move that tender 03-2022-Clearstone-29-03-2022 be awarded to Spring Hill Infrastructure Limited for the supply of Clearstone as described in the tender for $128,016 plus tax.
Heard the motion.
Second. David Duplessis.
Second by David Duplessis. Anything on the question?
Brett, could you just explain about the clear stone and the whole idea behind it?
Certainly, we use clear stone as a drainage material when we build our landfill cells. So the first thing you do when you're constructing a landfill cell is build a clay liner. You then put in a geomembrane liner, drainage pipes, and then this clear stone. before you put a filter fabric on top. So it just keeps a nice clear drainage layer for the leachate to siphon off of the waste and prevents it from fouling up.
Perfect. I thought that, but I just wanted to make sure. So thanks.
Well, you're welcome, Bob.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Tenders.
Mr. Chair, we had a total of 5 tenders awarded in the first quarter. The first was a bulldozer for $335,457.30. The second was for work on our baling facility. It was not awarded. It came in significantally higher than the engineer's estimate at $694,786.30. Geotextile was the fourth tender, and that again would be like tonight's tender used in cell construction. That was awarded by myself for a total of $122,566.08. And lastly, a tender awarded for scales, again awarded by myself. It was within my authority for $112,358.45.
Thank you. Any questions for Brett? Thank you. Staff reports, committee appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm bringing this forward as in compliance with section 3.1.3 of our procedural bylaw. And that not only sets the term of office for standing committee members to 1 year, but it also requires that following the selection of executive officers, the following meeting, committee members must be appointed. For information purposes, the most recent committee appointments were made in September 21, following the municipal elections. So the reason that we typically change the standing committee members is to bring in a new perspectives and new views to be considered during the committee meetings. While that's a big benefit, it also requires a period of adjustment while new committee members become familiar with the issues at hand. Now, in typical years, there's obvious benefits with that approach. However, with the ongoing local government reform process, this is not a typical year. So in this case, the benefits of standing committee membership continuity is unusually high this year, not only because of Bill 82 and the impacts that it may have on governance and finance issues, but also because of the rapid approach of budget development season and the board's July-August hiatus from regular meetings. So given all of those things, staff recommends this year that the board pass the motion included in this report to satisfy the requirements of section 3.1.3 of our procedural bylaws, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Somebody like to make the motion? That's
I will,
thank
if you like.
Or Judy,
Staff
okay.
recommends that the board pass the following motion to satisfy the requirements of section 3.1.3 of our procedure bylaws. Motion that the Board of Regional Service Commission 11 agree to reappoint existing standing committee members with terms ending upon the formation of the Capital Region Service Commission in January 2023, subject to the members' agreement to serve.
Second motion, Chamberlain. Second by Michael Chamberlain. Anything on the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Executive Director's report, please.
I'm back.
You're back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's been a while since I've given a report on the regular operations of the organization. So I thought tonight would be a good chance to touch on that. I'll start with the planning division. You know, I don't want to spoil the report in advance, but planning has absolutely been busy. There's no question that this has been another huge year for that division. A few numbers of note. There have been 123 building permits issued so far, with a value of $28,934,000. Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, $28,934,000. And that's an increase of 6.5 million over last year. In addition to that, there are another 77 applications in the queue, and they're waiting for various environmental and regulatory approvals. Those outstanding applications are valued at an additional $13 million. So a very busy year. 88 subdivision application files have been submitted. There's been an increase in complaints because of the early arrival of spring and some of these unsightly properties becoming more visible with the melting snow. On top of that, planning has been dealing with the Majorville rural plan. That was completed, and there was a public hearing held. And it was not well received by the residents. PRAC eventually, when they had a chance to look at it, decided not to recommend it to the minister as a result of that feedback. Additionally, there have been some rezonings. One of the higher profile rezonings that was looked at recently was a Myra quarry rezoning. And PRAC did not recommend that to the minister either. So those are still out there. I believe the plan is to go back and make some amendments to the rural plan and try that again with Majorville before it goes forward. Lastly, I guess the building inspectors have been unusually busy, again, because of the early arrival of spring. And this is a good indicator that this is going to be another busy construction year. They're already out there doing building inspections, which is unusual, given the fact that the spring weight restrictions aren't off yet. So typically people would wait until those weight restrictions are off. Plus you've got that high cost of diesel. So it's a good indication of the kind of demand that's out there right now for new construction. And staff have certainly been responding to that in a very professional and efficient way, I would say. And I think it's a good opportunity to thank them right now. And you know, they deserve a lot of credit for trying to keep pace with this huge volume that's really continued since last year. On the solid waste division side, things are working well. We've seen a slight reduction in commodity pricing, so we'll see a slight reduction as a result in revenues in our recycling facilities. But commodity prices are still high. We're getting ready for our construction season where we'll be building cells. That's anticipated to begin within the next, I'd say 4 weeks, when things start to dry up. And lastly, in solid waste, our landfill gas utilization plant is expected to post another strong month this month. Gas flows did decline somewhat in the spring, and that's not unusual. They typically do that, and it has a lot to do with the melting snow moving through the collection piping and creating blockages. Those are starting to clear up now, and with an increased maintenance program, we've been able to get gas flows to increase again. So good news there. Lastly, the last item I'll touch on is an item that we discussed, I believe, in February's meeting, which was the Collier's project leaders proposal for development of a governance structure and development of an RFP for the prime design consultant for the Regional Aquatic Center. We're ready to move forward with that. We finalized the proposal recently. There were a couple of small changes from when the board last saw it. Scope and price have not changed. The timeline was adjusted though to account for the waiting period that's required to receive funding from either from RDC or from the federal government. So it was modified to reflect that. Other than that, it's we did receive funding for half of the amount of that proposal that was presented in February. So approximately $28,000 was received from RDC. The remainder being made up by the stakeholder communities. And we're ready to go forward and execute that proposal tomorrow and start work on development of the governance structure. That's all from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Brett? Okay, thank you. If there's no questions, then we'll move on to update on local government reform. Maurice Robichaud, please.
I hear you.
Maurice, we can't hear you.
What now? Can you hear now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I'll do a brief update, and then if there are questions, then certainly prepared to entertain any and all questions as per the usual. First, some of you may be aware the ads for the CEO position have actually gone out in consultation with the chair, Mr. Bigger. We agreed on an interview committee at our level of 3 individuals, and we agreed that I offered him an opportunity to sit on that committee. He accepted. So John is on that committee, and we agreed that we would extend the offer to Derek Pleadwell and to Stephen Hart, both of whom have accepted to sit on that committee. It's expected that through the process that KBRS has in place, that probably in the next 2 or 3 months, once they go through pre-interviews and start to get down to the short strokes, then our committee would convene and we would go through an interview process with some of the selected candidates that have been identified for the positions of CEO, both for this commission and for some of the others as well. It could be 1 round of interviews with our local committee, or it could be 2. I will join them on that committee, as will likely at least 1 representative from KBRS. And the plan is to have the CEO in place by September 1. And in case I haven't mentioned it, the salary for the CEO position, if it is in place, if it is in fact someone in addition to the current executive director, then the salary from September to December would be covered by the province. Secondly, there was a question at the last meeting from Mayor Wilson Shee regarding budget process. We have a draft timeline and outline of the budget process, and I'll just go through the highlights. And again, I want to underscore that it is still in draft form, but this is probably pretty close to what it'll look like. In the period of June 1st to July 28th, that 2-month period, we're expected to be determining the budget estimate for existing mandated services, of course, solid waste and planning. That's obviously not all that complicated. We'll also look at estimating non-mandated services, in other words, services that may be being carried out at the present time above and beyond those that are going to be carried out beginning in January 2023. And as well, we'll start to identify the cost around the new mandates, corporate costs, and how they would get apportioned for those services, etc. The intent is to have a very first draft of the budget by early in August. And again, this is the part that's not 100% finalized in terms of the sequencing, but it will be over the coming weeks. Obviously, there'll be a role in there for the Finance Committee. There'll be a role for the Advisory Committee. And then at some point, it'll go before the board, at least for a preliminary look and some feedback from the board, probably later on in in August. Then once we've received the input from the board, we'll make whatever adjustments are required at that time. It would then go out to the local governments for their review, including LSDs and other municipalities within the region, get their feedback by latter part of September, incorporate that with the intent of finalizing the budget and having it into the minister for his approval by middle to third week of October. So again, some of the particular details around that are still being finalized, but in response to the question that Mayor Shi raised at the last meeting, I just wanted to give you folks a sense of kind of what's being contemplated in terms of a budget making exercise at this point. There's been some further definition, if you will, of the specific mandates that are going to be expected to be carried out for the various services that the RSC will be carrying out starting in January 2023. Those were presented to a grouping of CAOs, I guess, late last week. They're out now for some feedback, and we expect to have that feedback on those more particular details of those services in the course of the next 2-3 weeks. By I think the 20th of May, they should be finalized by the end of the month, and then we really need to start defining exactly how those services are going to be delivered and what the costing estimates might be around the delivery of those services, who might deliver them, et cetera, et cetera. The one of the 5 services that will be added to the workload of the RSC going forward, that is probably most developed at this point, is economic development. And we've got a pretty detailed and pretty precise framework around what that mandate will be for the RSC. It's definitely being finalized now in the next couple of weeks, but it is very close to being completed. And we will embark on discussions now with Ignite and to see what the possibilities are in terms of Ignite being able to deliver those services on behalf of the RSC. The other one that's close to being finalized, or closer to being finalized than some of the others, I guess is probably a better way of putting it, is community development. You'll recall that we've had some discussions with ESIC, the Economic and Social Inclusion Corporation, about taking on some of the activity that they've been carrying out. Brett and I have a meeting tomorrow with Stéphane Leclerc and Pam Robichaud of ESIC. We've got a almost final version, I guess, of the MOU. We're hoping to be able to finalize that with some suggestions to them tomorrow. And once that's done, we will take it up through the advisory committee and to the board. And once we get complete satisfaction at this level with the content of that, then we would proceed to execution, and they would proceed to transfer the funding for the portion of the rest of the year that remains at that time. It would be apportioned on a basis of how much time is left. So for example, if we finalize the agreement by, I don't know, let's say the end of June, July 1st, that means we have 6 months left now, 3 months left to the end of the actual fiscal year. So it would be a 9-month, 9/12 transfer of dollars for the remainder of the year. But first things first, and as I say, finalizing the MOU is our next order of business tomorrow. And once we can do that satisfactorily, we'll take it up to the advisory board and to the full board, hopefully at the next meeting in early June. So that's, I guess, probably as good an update as I can give you at this point as to where we're at. I guess I'll close on this note. I'm frankly quite excited at the fact that we're starting to get much greater definition of what the mandates are for the RSC and the RSCs with regard to the delivery of these services. As I say, most of them are being refined and finalized, but I can really see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of being able to start putting some sense around what kind of delivery mechanism do we need to put in place, what do we expect the outcome of that to be, And obviously, what could be the cost implications of that? And then once we get the particular formula that the province is going to provide for how those services, the cost for those services should be apportioned among the entities, then we'll be able to start assembling the budget as I reviewed earlier in my remarks. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think that's about as good an update as I can give, but certainly open to try and field any questions. And if I can't, I'll certainly endeavor to get responses. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Maurice? Judy?
First of all, Maurice, I thank you very much for looking into the way the budget was going to unfold. That has been a question on my mind for quite some time now. Thank you for the clarification. And now with the notes that go out from tonight's meeting, will that information be included in our minutes for our next meeting?
Brett, we're recording.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Brett.
Sorry, Maurice. Yes, Judy, we'll include those details in the package.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate you, Maurice, doing a follow-up with us. And the next question for the CEO to doing the interviews. You mentioned John Bigger, Stephen Hart, and yourself, and there was another, was it Derek?
Derek Pleadwell, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and do we know what the salary range is for that position?
We do. The way it's been broken down is there are 3 levels, and Regional Service Commission 11, Regional Service Commission 11
Yes.
fits in the kind of the tier 1, if you will. The salary range is 134,500 to 151,398, 151,400.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maurice, I have
Mike Chamber.
one question for you. The advisory commission, like we have one counselor, one representative in area, and the advisory commission will be approved, will it not?
Approving which?
As in the different representatives of the area.
I don't understand what you're asking the advisory committee will approve in terms of the CEO appointment. Is it in terms of the budget? Which is it?
No, it's like in our area itself, like we have different regions.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that we have advisory commission that can bring their representations to our committee.
Well, I don't know what area you represent, but certainly you're either part of a new entity or an existing entity that's joining other entities and combining into a new entity, or
Right.
you're part of the rural district. And so if you're part of an entity, then you would end up having a mayor and council as part of that entity, right?
Right.
And so going
But
forward,
what I'm saying is, like, one person cannot do the whole area. Like NACWEC has 2. Ian's on mute, maybe. Ian, you hear me?
yeah, go ahead. Yes, I can hear you.
Hear you.
Okay. So like with that NACWEC and us, like we're doing real good. Like we're working together.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that we have, I know NACWEC has 2 counselors, we'll have,
Mm-hmm.
and we only have 1 here, but we have a big community.
Right. Well, look, and look, I understand the point that you're making. The difficulty that I have is we have people that carry out a variety of responsibilities, and they're really divided, in effect, in 2 responsibilities. One are facilitators like myself, who are responsible for the increased services that are going to be delivered by the regional service commissions. And so we work primarily with regional service commissions, with boards such as yourselves, an advisory committee that we've created from members of this board, and as well a working group which consists of CAOs and clerks from the region. The other part of the reform, I have colleague facilitators who are involved with bringing together communities to form new entities. And so while I have a passing awareness of what's going on, I don't know the details of each of the entities. And so I would suggest that in your case, your questions or concerns about representation would probably be best raised with your facilitator, who's Greg Lutz, I believe.
Yes, Greg.
Your Neckwick. So again, it's not that I don't want to try and answer your question. I just, unfortunately, I don't have that information, but I'm sure that Greg would be pleased to answer any and all questions that you would have.
Well, we have a meeting tomorrow night, but I just don't want to feel that one person, he or she, could do the whole thing. That's my problem.
Right. Well, as I say, and I'll send him a note tonight and just mention that you were asking some questions and that I've referred you rather to him, so that he has a heads up that you may be reaching out to him tomorrow at your meeting. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael and Greg, I don't know who was first, but Michael?
Yes, Mo, just wondering why the ED Oversight Committee was not used for the CEO interviews.
I'm sorry?
I was wondering why the ED Oversight Committee was not used for the CEO interviews.
We were encouraged, we the facilitators were encouraged to consider a couple of options. If, I'll be brutally honest, if we felt we had a good relationship with the chair of the board, that was probably the best place to start. And so, I've gained some knowledge and some respect for the chair of your board. And so I reached out to John. We were encouraged to consider the formation of a committee of 3, a committee of 5, maybe even a committee of 7. John and I kind of went back and forth as to what kind of numbers we should have on that. He recounted some experiences where he had sat on larger committees. I indicated that I'm going to join, I'm on that committee as well. So in addition to selecting members from the RSC that would sit on that selection committee, that interview committee, that we would also have myself, and we would also have at least 1, if not 2 representatives from KBRS. So we concluded that probably the best number to work with would be 3. And so again, the guidance that we were provided by the province and by KBRS was that, if you felt comfortable that the chair would be a good appointment to that, then you should consider maybe another elected official from the board, and then possibly a CAO. So I shared that information with John. We did go back and forth on who would be the best individuals, and in the end, settled on Derek and Stephen Hart as the other members of that committee. That was the process that we followed, and as I say, that's the process that's being followed in many of the other RSCs. There are other processes whereby they've reached out and they've involved other people from outside of the actual Regional Service Commission or outside of the group of administrators. But in my view, I felt comfortable enough in working potentially with John and discussing the matter with John that I went that route, and in the end, we've ended up with the individuals that are on it.
Thank you, Mo.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Greg?
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Maurice, for your candid answers to these complex issues. I had a fascinating conversation this week with a constituent whose vision is set much farther on the horizon than we've been focusing on. And their question and concern to me, and what I'm bringing forward to you is, how will the RSC or this transition process contemplate elements that are not part of the specific mandate brought down by the province? that we're to expand into in terms of capacity and so on and so forth. And specifically, this individual was hoping that the regional service commissions would take over the mandate for solid waste management so that it could be done. So the policy in that area could be done in a more comprehensive, all-inclusive way. And that, it just struck me as an excellent question because it's something that we haven't been considering. And it builds on some of the principles and virtues that come from, collective organization and economies of scale and so on and so forth. But I had no idea how I could answer, the question in terms of, when the RSC as an individual, commission or in a larger format would be turning its mind to some of these other opportunities that may exist for us to contemplate. So maybe 2% of your desk could be committed to, these issues that are off in the future.
Right. Well, that's an excellent question. And it's not the first time that I've heard a question of that sort. And I guess I would say this, and again, speaking quite candidly, there is quite an additional load that's going to come upon the Regional Service Commission effective January 2023. We've got a handful, 4 or 5. Some may identify it as 6 additional services by January 2023, and then of course a broader social mandate to be adopted in January of 2024. I'd hope that we would receive more clarity on the precise nature of the mandate for the delivery of these services, which we're now getting, which I'm very thankful for, because it'll allow us to really start to move forward on, contemplating how are we going to deliver these services, by what means, potentially internally, contracting out, a combination of both, etc. So my point is simply this: there's quite a large volume of work that needs to be done between now and the end of January. All of that being said, there's absolutely nothing that precludes a new council and the administration of the RSC starting in January of 2023, as it's developing the implementation plans for the delivery of these services and the strategies that it's going to utilize to implement those services, either directly itself or using third parties, etc. There's nothing that stops the RSC at that point to consider and to look seriously at perhaps adopting additional service offerings to the communities and ultimately to the residents of the region. So, and if that's one that's meritorious, determined to be meritorious by the board at that time, then obviously it would be a matter of reaching out to the communities, applying a funding formula, and be it that service or any other service that you or others would feel would be appropriate to consider. So, the page, to some extent, other than carrying out the existing menu of services that are being conferred on the RSCs, any and other options can be considered by the RSC at that time.
Outstanding. Thank you, Maurice. That gives me all I need to respond to that constituent and to understand how things will play out in the future.
Sure.
I
Okay.
appreciate your answer.
Thanks. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Chair.
If there's no other questions, thank you very much, Maurice, and to the members that asked questions. Since there's no other business, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
Judy.
Moved by Judy, seconded by
Paul.
Bob Powell. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Lot.
Bob, you're going to send me that information in an email about the downtown on Thursday
Yeah,
at 4 o'clock?
yeah, I will do that almost immediately.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Night.